I've always felt kind of bad that I was born. My parents owned 2 houses that they would eventually have to give up because of how sick I was when I was first born. I was born very early at 1 pound 13 ounces due to my mom getting food poisoning, and her labor had to be induced. My mom was flown by emergency helicopter from Prince George to Vancouver, BC, to BC Children's Hospital, now the BC Women's Hospital. They induced her labor. She said it felt like there was 30 doctors and nurses in her delivery room. After I was born, I was put into the special care nursery where I lived in an incubator for 7 months. My parents said it was hard because they couldn't hold me. Then, at 1 month old, I suffered a grade 3 brain hemorrhage, the worst you can get. The outcome grew darker. The doctor told my parents that I couldn't breathe at 7 months without an oxygen machine, and that usually babies that couldn't breathe on their own don't survive. So before Christmas, my family and family friends came to say their final goodbyes. My mom said that it was a miracle. The next month, I started breathing on my own. The doctors believed a bad outcome though. They said I would have learning disabilities, poor fine motor skills, and most likely end up in a wheelchair due to my cerebral palsy. The doctor said I would never be able to draw, paint, or play the piano. I didn't end up in a wheelchair, although I walked with a gait, which means uneven. This eventually went away. I attended the Children's Variety Club, now called Children's Variety. I went there to work on my fine motor skills. I remember being maybe 5 and trying to stack blocks and finding it very difficult. I started to have frustration and anger issues. At age 3, I would later be diagnosed with OCD at the age of 15. My parents noticed something was wrong with me. I would repeatedly watch movies over and over again. My parents had a hard time distracting me from my OCD thoughts. So at 3 years old, they created the papers encouraging me to express myself through art. Even though the doctor said I would never be able to draw, I soon began to draw all the time, and myself and my parents realized I had a natural gift for art. I also learned to play the piano. Art became my outlet. I struggled in school and was put into a resource room, now non-existent. It was a classroom where children with any learning disabilities were placed. I found it unchallenging and I grew angry, and in grade 7 I would be tested. That year there were sweatshirts with the year printed on the back, and everyone in grade 7 filled in their name. I wasn't told about this along with the other grade 7s in my classroom, and the worst part was that the class that had organized it was right across the hall from us. I felt forgotten. I wrote a letter to the principal. It was read at the next staff meeting. A grade 7 teacher gave me her sweatshirt. It didn't have my name on the back, but at least I had the satisfaction that someone had listened. I had found a voice in advocacy. I would continue promoting advocacy through talks and artwork. I would have gallery shows, solo shows, and group shows. I would also do this cover art and art for the book Success Stories from the Frontline. The doctor that wrote the book and I are still keeping contact today. He even bought the painting of mine used for the cover art. Global TV would do an interview on me for this book on the afternoon news. It's a little scary. They count down and then the interview starts, and they are screened on the desk so you can see yourself, but I did well. Then I would really begin my advocacy. The doctors who I did Success Stories from the Frontline would invite me to a hotel in Vancouver to share my story with art wheeled in the back. As I talked at the end, 200 people stood up and gave me a standing ovation. I thought that this standing ovation was a one-time amazing experience, but I would continue to give talks and receive standing ovations. I've spoken live all across BC and on Skype to New Zealand, the USA, and the United Kingdom. I sold several paintings, and I've had global interviews in Canada, the USA, and the UK. I've also done promotional art, including posters, calendars, and syllabuses. You might think my life seems pretty successful, but it hasn't always been. To this day, I battle with OCD, borderline personality disorder, and on February 18, 2020, I had a miscarriage. Losing my baby was devastating. To think I would never get to hold my baby made me very depressed. I was taking a course at the time. I got pregnant unexpectedly, and that alone was hard. Then once the miscarriage happened, my classmates and instructor had a funeral for my baby. It was the hardest thing I'd ever had to do. I brought balloons and we all went outside and I released the balloons. It was raining, but I stood outside to see the last balloon disappear to say a final goodbye to my baby. In the future, I hope to give talks locally and globally, continue selling art and doing more promotional materials and global interviews.